Well, it's Thursday again, that time of the week, when the hammers come out, and we'll have hammers tonight. Hi all, and welcome to another round of Truth Hammers. We have a plethora of different things to cover tonight. There's some booming intel, which will be in the second hour. It's quite a variety show tonight. There's so many different topics that I've managed to put in, and it's probably another one for the archives. But we'll see how we get through it all. I'm going to cover, which will be an increasing theme early on in this show before the news bits, about the THI state and groups, and correct some of those issues. I know not everyone came to the Zoom on Saturday, or some of the Zooms previously, so we're going to iron a few issues out. And for those of you who keep messaging me with certain issues, and one or two people, I am aware, and it will be addressed. It's getting a bit out of hand now. Right, let's get into the show anyway. And the link for the show, which is every Thursday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, is Spreaker.com/user/8955881. We have the THI website, which will eventually house some of the state groups and the country groups, which I'll explain shortly, as well as the archives of all the show, the must listen to shows for the new listeners, and also the Manor World Holding Trust section, and Kim is all on there, plus grounding, centering and shielding, and how to avert psychic attacks. It's all on that website that's expanding, and Michael tells me I need to upgrade it and pay a bit more because we've got that much on it now, so that's good. You can find the archive on my YouTube channel, which is the Tommy Williams channel, and it includes all the shows. We have the Facebook page, Truth, Honour and Integrity, and the Facebook social media alternative without the spying and the privacy and the data mine and all the other stuff that's on Facebook, on MeWe.com, and that's also Truth, Honour and Integrity. The People's Club website link about the foundation and what it's all about, which will be expanded shortly. I'm trying to find time to do a video on what we expect from the People's Club and how to go forward with it, and that's thepeoplesclub.org. Thanks to everyone who's contributed to my Patreon, and you can help with that, and that's at patreon.com/TommyW/memberships. All the transcripts of the intel and the op-ed pieces, including some of the must listen to shows, are all on there, so you can all access, and that goes back to, I think, somewhere in the region of May 2017, so we're coming up to 2 years of transcripts on there now. And the email for the show is truth.honour.and.integrity@gmail.com. Well, where do we start? Between this show and the next show will be, surprisingly, although it seems longer sometimes, the 3rd anniversary of our unceremonious booting from Cosmic Voice, myself and the admins, Holly and Chloe at the time, and James and a few others. 3 years coming up on May the 15th, so I think that's next Wednesday. So right, let's get into the THI state and country groups, not city and county groups, as one particular member seems to be putting out all the time. We are creating we have started to create documents for the standardization to go on across all THI groups, whether it's state or country, and also creating a database of all the groups. which will be viewable and updatable on the THI Think Difference website, and also how to create a MeWe or THI page for your state and or your country, all of which will be available on thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org website. Now, I ask all to bear with us as we complete this task, and again, to reiterate to all, only state groups or country groups. If there's more than one state group, it will be removed. And I would rather not have to waste more of my time, which I've spent again this week, although some of it was beneficial. And we've also reiterated no side groups at this point, just your state groups, no leaders groups, nothing. This is to avoid future issues, which I wish to avoid. Self-appointed leaders could find themselves, as I pointed out this week, ousted at a later date because the few guidelines posted were not adhered to. So I'm trying to protect those people also. State or country leaders will rise in a natural progression way rather than self-appointed, where somebody can come along and go, well, you didn't take the vote, and blah blah blah, and then suddenly we've got more bedlam than we've already had. Now, what has also come up is some people are concerned with mentioning their details or skill sets. And the reason behind this is, if, say, a project starts in Iowa and we have a member who wishes to do that particular job, then that post will be open for that person to take it up first. If there's more than one who are interested in it, then it has to be decided on by whoever's running the project in Iowa. So before the position is thrown open to those outside of THI, OYM or off-planet radio members, that is why we're asking for skill sets, where we can put people into jobs that they wish to do, not just, well, I'll fit in there. That's what we're looking for. Everyone to be working in their jobs and projects that they desire to do. Not just take any old job just to exist like many of us are doing now. I want it to become where your job is also your hobby. That's how people really excel in themselves. Because then it doesn't become a job. It becomes a passion. This is not a job to me, it's my passion. And it does come with a few certain brickbats here and there, more so in the last few weeks, but that's the way it is. And it's all about ironing things out and moving forward. Now, this may require some of you to move states in some cases, and it depending on your skill set required. It's about being flexible. If you want your ideal job and it's not available, for argument's sake, in Florida, and that position is open in Iowa, then it's something you may, at this point, want to process. Would I move to be part of what I want to do within the THI, which will then become the People's Club process? So, I'm putting it up now, is will you be prepared to move? In some cases, that move will be funded. Not in all, but in some cases it will. As discussed on the Zoom call on Saturday, I think, if certain people have so-called new technology, then a centre will be provided for them to work from in a safe environment. So that will require those people to move to that location, which has not been disclosed. So now, another thing that came up it's important we use these funds for maximum benefit. So no duplicate projects in the same town. I would sooner members get an understanding where you can give an existing company who's already set up all the startup costs $500,000 for to use a bland figure, than spend $1 million on a new startup. You know, the idea behind that is we approach that company, say it's an animal shelter, and there's an existing one, and we can give them $500,000 to then employ the ones who want to work in there, and also incorporate our ideals. I would sooner do that than spend $1 million on a brand new animal shelter startup that's running in competition with what we've already got. So when you're thinking on your projects, that's part of your investigation work. Is there something available that we can expand on? If not, then we will consider a brand new startup. So, for example, one member mentioned they wanted a care home for the elderly. So then those state members would look at, are there any care homes in the neighbourhood? Are they up for sale? Are they in financial trouble? Can we buy them out? These are some of the questions that would come up in your state groups or your country groups. Can their facilities be expanded, are some of the investigation work ideas that are mentioned in the guidelines. The discussions and ideas on how to employ people who are disabled or too ill or too elderly to work came up this week. And one idea is to create a pension pay for those people out of the profits of companies funded by the People's Club. You know, it's not going to work early on, there's only one or two, but once it expands, you know, it can be set up in a way where we actually look after people's pensions rather than what's going on a national level with pensions, and people are paying an awful lot in and not getting a lot back out. You know, we want to change that. But these are all just guidelines and points of discussion and ideas for your state calls. And then ideas can be made available to other states via the regional calls, which is all the states. And the same applies with, you know, for other countries as well. So for future reference, local is your state or country. Regional calls would be all the states, or all the EU, or all of Africa, or all of Australia, New Zealand and Asia. And an international call would be the global one with me at the end of each month. Now, another thing that came up, members are free to post the transcripts. Please listen closely to this, because it's going to cause me more issues. Members are free to post the transcripts of the must listen to shows only, please, on their Facebook or MeWe files section, not the weekly shows, as that is for the paying Patreons, you know. And as I rely on that for my earnings currently, it's important that I protect not only my Patreon but also the contributors. So if you're going to post transcripts, not of the weekly shows, please, just the must listen to shows on your Facebook or MeWe files section. Even after several requests and notifications, there are some people that are in more than one state or more than one country group. I'm asking all to please stay in your own groups. It is important. It will become more clearer as time goes on. You know, it was decided if there was only a few members in one state, for argument's sake, Wisconsin, they should join up with state calls when they're doing their weekly calls or whatever time you choose to do them, with a state that is connected to theirs by border. So, the likes of Wisconsin, there's Minnesota, I think, there's Iowa, and there's Illinois. And so as the groups fill up, so suddenly if Wisconsin goes from 2 or 3 members to 12 or 15, then they can go back into their own group calls within that state, and then the bi-weekly calls would be for all states. Some people have started to register their state or country as a business enterprise. Now, those who have done so or have done that will have to cancel it. I stated several times that this is a phase 2 issue and not phase 1. Phase 2 is when the funding comes out. Now, the reason being is once funds come out, it will no longer be THI as it is now. It's THI Colorado, it's THI Florida, THI Holland, but it will transfer to the People's Club. THI will no longer exist in its current format. We will be focusing on the People's Club only. So like the current format of THI states or countries, it will be standardised similar to, like, for argument's sake, Ireland the People's Club, or Iowa the People's Club would be the name of that particular state or country's fund. With the emails being ireland.thepeoplesclub.org or iowa.thepeoplesclub.org. Now, the main object of doing it this way is to make our stand against the bureaucratic nonsense that we have today, and to start to standardise things right across the board. So we all have the same documents, we all have the same guidelines, we all have the same name, apart from the different names of the states or the countries, obviously. But it's all formatted where it makes it easier to find in a search engine. And in essence, what we're doing is booking the current system from chaos to the people's order. You're trying to find anything relevant on a search engine now is a lesson in mind effery, to put it bluntly. And so we're not following the old failed model. So we're going to change it, and everything is going to be standardised. And as stated in a Zoom call last weekend, the essence of what I wish to see with all our groups is keep it simple. Everything else outside in life is now all too complex, and it's beyond ridiculous. We want to standardise everything, be it the names, the documents, the statements, the ways of operating, the ways of communicating. The few rules or guidelines are based on keeping it simple and creating a tight-knit group. This is what we haven't got in outside of the core pirate structure. We don't have a tight-knit group of humanity, and this is what we're trying to create. And this is why I don't like splinter groups. Those spin-off groups will only be necessary in phase 2 or phase 3 of it as committees or subcommittees when things expand out. Final piece on the THI state or country groups. Issues have arisen within and connected to these groups already, as many of you will know, with egos out of balance, some people jumping ahead, some joining several groups or creating several groups, and some wanting to control more things than necessary, and some are using the THI popularity to sell their wares or create private groups. Now, I don't wish or need to name names regarding this, it's not necessary, but I'm highlighting it because it shows the levels of work required to get people to work together as equals. some people's inner and shadow sides have raised their heads to be addressed in these exchanges, in my opinion, and it's up to those involved to look at that and make minor adjustments. So a couple of minor issues was to do with leader or leaders. Over time, all of you, a group of natural leaders will emerge. There's no need to push to be the leader. That's the old school way, not the new way that we're striving to do. And it should be noted, we're not creating the Thomas Williams Club. As you can see, my name is not referenced up front for THI or the People's Club. We are creating our club. We the people as a collective, and individual names don't matter. And it's something I feel a few of you perhaps need to take a look at. But don't feel bad with yourself. I would sooner you just quietly take stock of actions you've done and make necessary adjustments of thinking. Changing requires a transition that can lead to chaos within the mind. And it's stated generally it takes 30 to 40 days to change a habit and to adjust to a new way of thinking or acting. Use that time to do that. And as an example, many at first did not like the MeWe group, but over time many have now stayed in there, and some have now deleted their Facebook page. And initially, with that initial change, I don't like it, it's different, and suddenly now it all feels like home to many people, and are moving off the Facebook page. And in society in general has created a situation where for many starting anything new becomes automatically a fear. I won't be able to do this or that. Well, what I'm saying to you is quit that. You are capable of being so much more if you just set yourself free from your own boundaries of limitation, which we've all engaged in. And maybe a reminder of a small piece that was stated in previous shows that is important for all to look at, engage and adhere by. Just try to accept we are in paradise when we are seeing and understanding something new. Our God should be change. Our religion should be understanding, and searching for the truth is our greatest social challenge and also purpose. I'll be back shortly. Take note of the words. We move as one. Yes, we move as one. It's the only way. The cabal all work together, and we have to learn to do that also. Like everything else starting out new, issues come up, and certain things don't get listened to, and it's all the way things go. And what we're trying to do is get out of that chaos and into proper order, where it's simple and easy for everyone to follow. And I'm looking forward. I had a great call with people from the EU and Holland in particular in midweek. The ideas that were coming forward and things they were suggesting, it is fantastic, and it's the same with the people in America and Canada and other countries that have now joined in, and I think we're up to 14 countries, and nearly half the states have now joined in, which is good, and as it settles down, we'll see a lot more than that, which is good. And yes, it's been 3 years next week of no 2 weeks. I don't miss that, I have to say. Right, I'll have to cut down on the news with that extra piece. So let's see which ones we can pick out of these. A typical problem which has been highlighted before, and this is why I don't trust the medical people. They need to be retrained right across the board, whether they like that idea or not. It is the truth. And a pharmaceutical company founder has been accused of bribing doctors across the US to prescribe the highly addictive fentanyl spray. And that person was convicted last week in a case that exposed such marketing tactics as using a stripper turned sales rep to give a physician a lap dance. Oh my, and it gets worse. So John Kapoor, who's a former chairman of Insist Therapeutics, was found guilty of racketeering conspiracy after 15 days of jury deliberations. 4 ex-employees of the Chandler-based, Arizona-based company, including the former exotic dancer, was also convicted. I wonder if that was Stormy Daniels. Oh my, the slapper. Now, some of the most sensational evidence in a months-long federal trial, including a video of employees who were caught doing not good things, as a giant bottle of the powerful opioid spray Subsys, and a testimony of how the company made a habit of hiring attractive women as sales representatives. Terrible. And the case threw a spotlight on the federal government's efforts to go after those it views as responsible for fueling the nation's deadly opioid crisis. Now, opioid overdoses claimed nearly 400,000 lives in the US between 1999 and 2017. 18 years, 400,000. Terrible. And this was according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. One wonders why it took them 20 years to realise it was a problem. And an estimated 2 million people are addicted to the drugs, which include both prescription painkillers such as OxyContin and illegal drugs such as heroin. Now, Kapoor and others were accused of bribing doctors to boost sales of Subsys and misleading insurers in order to get payments approved for the costly drug, which was meant for cancer patients in severe pain. And the bribes were paid in forms of fees for sham speaking engagements, sounds like Hillary Clinton really, that were billed as educational opportunities for other doctors. And the charges will carry a 20-year sentence. Oops. What are we next? Yeah, let's put this out. Norah O'Donnell is expected to leave CBS this morning. That's not this morning, but the name of the show. And Anthony Mason and Tony Docuple are expected to join Gayle King as the anchor desk, while John Dickerson will transition to 60 Minutes at CBS. Now, the gist of this is there is nearly a complete anchor overhaul of all the morning shows has been a matter of intense discussions since Susan Zirinsky was named as president of CBS last January. Now, Gayle King, that is, has emerged as the linchpin on CBS, which has suffered a ratings slide after the ouster of Charlie Rose in 2017. Get this, her new deal is said to be close to double her current $5.5 million salary annually. $5.5 million a year to read bullshit. You know, you can employ nearly 1,300 people in $40,000 a year jobs, doing real jobs for that, and not committing treason against your country, which is what all these fake news readers are. They're committing treason against the people. As a side note, it's all becoming a very familiar theme. Susan Zirinsky was born in New York and born to Jewish parents. Just saying. Isn't it amazing? A group who comprises less than 2% of the demographic all end up in top positions. Oh my. Let's ignore what Barack Obama has to say. 3 New York teenagers, no surprise, lots of MK Ultra and Long Island fun and games around there, were arrested last week after being accused of planning to build a bomb and detonate it at a high school on, go figure, Long Island. Connecticut High School in Bohemian, New York was evacuated for roughly 30 minutes last Thursday, whilst the 3 boys were arrested. Well, the boys, all 16, have not been identified by the police. And the police said the 3 were overheard discussing plans to build a bomb while on a school bus ride, and multiple other students reported the conversation to school administrators, who then notified the police. And the chief of detectives, Matt Lewis, in Suffolk County, said the boys' conversation had been recorded by video and audio surveillance on the school bus. He stated it's fairly explicit, and it goes on for about 10 minutes. They're not whispering, they're speaking openly. There is that honest terrorist narrative again, is it not? Who talks about their crimes they're going to do openly in public? People not question that. It's unreal. I suggest maybe we'll never find out who the real names, or maybe have, who knows. A family of an Australian woman shot dead by police has been promised $20 million in compensation by the US city of Minneapolis this week. Mohammed Noor shot Justine Damond as she approached his patrol car to report a possible rape behind her Minneapolis home back in 2017. Miss Damond, who was unarmed, and the former policeman, was found guilty of her murder on Tuesday. Her family have said they will donate $2 million towards fighting gun violence. And the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, said unprecedented circumstances played a role in the settlement, which is actually the highest in the city of the state of Minnesota has ever paid out. There was not a clear threat before the use of force was made. And he went on to say, this is not a victory for anyone, but rather a way for our city to move forward. Not for the family, it's not. It has to be addressed, police violence. It really has to be addressed. It's a problem out on the streets. It's a problem within their homes. The highest category of domestic violence is within where there's a police officer within the home. Are we for time? Sri Lankan authorities have called on the public to surrender swords and large knives amid heightened security concerns following the deadly Easter Sunday attacks. And police said knives used for legal everyday activities should not be included in the handover this week. Hundreds of weapons have been seized in searches since the April 21st attacks, and more than 200 people were killed in coordinated suicide bombings. Did they carry knives? Maybe not. In addition to weapons, the police spokesman called on people in possession of police or camouflaged military uniforms to hand them into the nearest police station over last weekend. He did not confirm whether police would give amnesty to those who surrendered weapons. during the 2-day handover period. I'll have an op-ed piece on that a bit later. Good news on the front about child exploitation. Although I received rather sad news about 15 minutes before going on air. Someone who's actually appeared on our show in the past has had their child trafficked and sent to a foreign country. I've been notified today. Not good. This is, of course, we've also got a member who had 2 of their children taken off them by the system and denied access, and it's a massive problem beyond people's comprehension of the levels it's going on. So when I hear stories like this, it's kind of rather pleasing. Authorities in 8 states arrested 82 people in operations this week that also rescued and identified 17 children thought to be victims of exploitation. And this was a 3-day operation and provides a snapshot of the work that the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force is doing around the clock 7 days a week. They made a statement. He said, "Predators are real and they walk amongst us," according to Alan Flora, who's the commander of the North Carolina Task Force. Now, the raids and undercover operations targeted people who had or were distributing child pornography and others who use technology and the internet to exploit children. 7 people were arrested after they allegedly travelled to meet and have sex with a minor. One of the people arrested is a youth minister, and according to officials, that man is from Cary, North Carolina. The suspects range in age from 20 up to age 70, and law enforcement officers from Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia and West Virginia were all involved in the roundup. You're going to hear a lot more of those type of stories, a lot more. Maybe one more news story. The rest will have to wait till next week. Western countries participating in the Iran nuclear deal have warned Tehran there will be serious consequences if it takes steps that violates its terms. Now, the UK, France and Germany said they would still back the deal as long as Iran upheld its commitments. Really? Now, it follows Iran's move to suspend some commitments. Now the US has left the deal and has begun imposing new sanctions. And the 2015 accord was intended to curb Iran's nuclear ambitions in return for relief from sanctions. Yet what these people are failing to address or announce is Iran already has nuclear weapons, because guess who sold it to them? Israel. Oops. They've had them for over 20 years because the Zionists in Israel sold them nuclear weapons. So forget about Iran building nuclear weapons. They were given to them by the so-called, we're the most important state around the world. No. That same country sold all America's warfare and military secrets to China, remember. So all of it is a complete load of nonsense, and people have to see through it. But its economy, Iran's, has been badly hit by new sanctions imposed by Mr. Trump and the US neocon hawks. And the value of Iran's currency has dropped to record lows, and its annual inflation rate has quadrupled. Now, the questions that need to be asked from this is, if Iran is such a threat, why are EU countries asking them to continue the programme? Does not the UK, Germany, and in particular France have more pressing concerns to deal with within their own countries than bothering about others? Now, given Iran's currency rate has dropped, you know what comes next, don't you? I predict coming soon, buy your Iranian rials. That's the name of the Iranian currency. To go with your zims, dinars, dings, dongs and dungs currency. And we'll all become multi-billionaires when the 800 numbers arrive. No, that's not happening. So for those new, there will never be a GCR or RV like the current internet clown agencies and their minions predict. And I'll repeat, never. No one is stopping it. It was never happening to begin with. Period. And even Benjamin Fulford admitted that this week. Another one who said our show talks out of its ass, and another example of how this show keeps things real. Right, let's get into some Q&A. Does humanitarian projects, does this include agriculture? Yeah. Free housing? It could do. Manufactured goods? Yes. Particularly in countries that are not self-sustaining. There's only one country at the moment that's self-sustaining, and that's Russia. Hence why it's attacked, because it's not at the request of other countries who can then play games and issue sanctions, like what happened to Iran. You know, transportation, yeah. Electricity and water, yeah. Medical facilities, yes. Educational and training facilities, yes. Anything that improves people's lives, preferably that doesn't harm the environment and creates jobs and allows people to flourish, is humanitarian. Turning people into self-sustained millionaires is not. Why do people get very high anxiety, paranoia when they smoke? I don't agree with that statement. Personally, it seems to calm most people. Not everyone's the same, but maybe some do. Maybe some have high anxiety to begin with and paranoia, and they smoke to prevent some of that. Does this have anything to do with being an empath? It opens their crown chakras much, and they feel all of the fear and pain of the planet and things around them. No, it doesn't. What do you got to remember and look at? You know, there's been a lot of programming about issues to do with smoking, and it doesn't make much sense. When it's not designed to, that's why. You know, it was a control mechanism, ignoring that certain beings don't like people who smoke. I'm not talking about humans either. But if smoking is the issue, why haven't the likes of the FDA or your overseeing body in Europe regulated the cigarette making companies into not putting in dangerous chemicals? Why was it that all the tribal people smoked in the past and didn't get disease? So if smoking is the cause of it, then they changed it. And it's those changes they made is what's causing it to make people sick. So the simple thing is, you remove the chemicals and leave the natural tobacco, which has proven over many thousand years to not cause illness or disease. Will all existing patents and government, corporate, NGO contracts be deemed null and void, or only ones of an international nature? I don't know the answer to that. There's an international, a lot of international contracts that are being rewritten and redrawn now. Certain amounts of knowledge is being put forward as to their real intentions, like the Trans-Pacific, Transatlantic, and Paris Climate Agreement, to name but three. With regards to patents, I would like to see an end to patents, personally. Why? Because what we're looking for is for those ideas to be shared with everyone, not to make that person a multi-billionaire. That type of thinking has to change. So people have got new technology, and all they're interested in is becoming the next corporate conglomerate. It's not the right thinking. It's just not. So maybe at a later date patents can be dropped. That is a co-pirate structure where eventually they grant those patents, and then what happens is they are given by the co-pirate structure some funding to start up, so they're in bed with the corporate structure right from the off. And then generally with a new startup they need 3 levels of funding. Once it gets to level funding 3, that company and that patent is in trouble with money deliberately, and then the core pirates come in and go, well, your company owes us X amount, we're going to take the patent off you and give you a nominal amount, and they take over it. Well, we have to stop that. We have to stop that. I had one member, Daryl, who offered me a patent for free on a certain thing. That's the way forward. Not for me to go and make millions on it. No. To share it with humanity. That has to be the thinking going forward. What would you suggest people do with their individual retirement accounts that are still in the bank? Should they take them out and take the hit with the taxes? I recently rolled over mine from one of the major banks into an IRA account in a local credit union, but now wondering if that is safe. It's a little bit safer than the major banks, that's a certainty. As regards, I don't know enough about IRAs and banking, and it's not an expert on how I would to turn around and tell you whether you should keep it or you shouldn't on those. I think we have people within the group, Ra Halitha being one of them, who may be able to advise you better on that. What I'm telling people is take money out of the major banks. We don't need their harvesting. Eventually they will collapse and we can create new banks and operate without them. Using a metaphor, you described how Radomir came here with his sword ready to fight. For the lack of a better term, would vanquishings make him slip back on the level on the Levashov scale? No. If it's in defence, not attack. Big difference. So if you defend and that is the outcome, then that is not the case, as I understand it. There's been far too much violence on this planet from day one. The key is to reverse it. And yes, some people say, you want to lynch this person and do that and shoot this one and take them out. And I get all that to a point, but why would we operate the same way they have? Why not do it different? Why not teach those people a better way? Why not put those people to work in certain conditions, preferably away from society, so they don't corrupt more people, where they can work off their karma before the end of this lifetime, which is not going to transfer over into the next one. Everyone's been lied to on every level. You'll find out another group who have been realised they've been lied to coming up shortly in the intel. Is it possible to win higher plane battles without level slip consequences? Well, there's the answer: yes, in defence. When people receive the money from the trust in the bank account, what does this mean for the tax system? It's too wide ranging. You're going to have to break that question down. Now we have to pay taxes on almost every euro we have, but the trust money is actually from the people and is given back to the people. What does this actually entail in the system? Well, if you have a 501c3, then and it's a non-for-profit, then you're not paying tax, which is why Clinton's et al. Set up all the foundations to do that. But the average basic corporation will have to pay corporate taxes. Yes, we're aware of where it comes from, but you can't just change every system in one day or 1 week or 2 weeks or 2 years. Things have to be transitioned over time and looked at, and things phased in and things phased out. But initially it'll be done largely within their system, not ours. Over time it will become ours, and those things can be addressed. Why is the European Empire focused on taking over North Africa? Put simply, minerals and resources. That's the gist of it. Why do we need to wait for communication with our fellow states or country folks using Facebook, for instance? Can you post ideas in your area and include them, or invite them to join the group? And they do the same. That way we can share in the field faster and communicate questions as necessary. Well, that is essentially of what your Facebook or MeWe state group is about. You don't have to wait for your call. You can all post ideas. What do you think of this? Do you think we could discuss this in the call? And communicate together different ideas. And then when you get one or two of you or more who will collect those ideas and formulate it into questions that will be brought up for a round table discussion within your state call. So I'm fine with that. Right, we're going to have a music break, fairly long one song music break, but this is one of my favourite songs, and it has some interesting words in it somewhere along the line. We'll be back soon with the intel. Hi all, and welcome back. One of my all-time favourite songs, that Mr. Dio, and there's elements in that song somewhere that is key of what's going on behind the scenes, on and off and in world Let's get into the intel. Some of this is going to go boom. But first we'll get rid of the stupidity. Tomorrow, to much fanfare, the Fed, it is stated, will roll out the RV, and all the world's banks will be saved tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, where you can all gather your dinars, zims and dongs, because you know what, it's payout time. And back in the real world, that's not happening again. Trust me, it's just not. Next item. The deep states of America, Russia and China. Latest plot was to leverage gold out of North Korea and divide it up between them. Now, we've mentioned before there are several vaults around the world, and they went to this particular vault, which raised a flag, and their presence was noted outside of the vault. So it was decided to grant them access to the particular vault, and we watched. We have eyes and ears everywhere. So into the vault they went, and shock horror, the vault was empty. Oops. And then we heard noises of they stole our gold, was overheard. No, it was never your gold to begin with. And like we have said to all who wish to access the vaults, they were emptied back in 2014 and sent to a location inaccessible to clowns, cabal, dragon groups, deep states, you name it. All of it is being safeguarded until it is returned to the rightful country owners and or its people. Not where the gold was stolen from or housed, but right back to where it was stolen from. One day some of them will listen to what we have to say and not waste their time. But then we are dealing with clowns. Citibank has been found out as being operating as a private central bank in Russia. Except the Russians found out, and they've been doing an audit, and have now found that all banks in Russia are in massive deficit. Expect actions to take place in that country. They're not happy. Next item. Kim kind of briefly touched on this when she attended the Zoom call on Saturday. We've been discussing and integrating a complete full-on banks restructuring, which eventually took place this week, with them all being disconnected from various other intrusions, which range from banks, agencies, the Fed, rogue treasuries. So every single bank was disconnected from other connections. And all that work by Kim was completed yesterday. So now, for example, the Credit Union of Oregon, shall we say, is not being routed through several terminals, be it the Fed, be it Langley, be it Department of Homeland Security, the NSA, GCHQ, Five Eyes, you name it, to get to its destiny. Each terminal connection from every bank was taking that money, holding the money, and then leveraging that money from $50 up to $10,000 for every dollar on that one transaction. This is what they've been doing. So say someone sends $1 from Oregon to the UK. Each terminal, who were all connected to that original bank, were then collecting that $1 and leveraging it either 50 to 1 or 10,000 to 1. This process that Kim completed yesterday will now end that nonsense. So money goes now from point A to point B without the harvesting agents interfering. They've been collecting money that doesn't have anything to do with them, leveraging it and then keeping the profits. Those profits have no basis in an asset support system. None. So the gist of it now, all major banks globally no longer have access to other banks' transactions. None. All banks are now disconnected from each other and are now autonomous. Banks have been disconnected from central banks also, as they were looting and leveraging machines until further notice. Citibank is no longer the hidden central bank terminal for Russia or Africa, the whole of Africa, I might add. Any transaction into Africa had to go through Citibank first, where they leverage money off it. That has been stopped. Wells Fargo is no longer the hidden central bank terminal for all South and Central American countries. All cut off and no access. All agencies are now cut off from monitoring and or controlling currencies, and this ends the ridiculous duplicity programs of several groups all doing the same job, all monitoring the same currency. And we the people are paying for these several organisations to do the same job. Well, that's now going to stop. Only certain specified groups will be given access if approved by the trustee, and only then will it be a read-only option. No interaction anymore. You can monitor it as a read-only. You are not allowed to interact anymore and manipulate, as some of you have been doing. Monitoring of currencies will be done by one designated group approved by the government and the trust, be it the Treasury when they clean house, not currently, or as in the case currently, the Pentagon, who is under a temporary agreement with the trust. Only they are allowed to monitor. Next item. We also undertook recently another change in the banking system itself, of rewriting all the code. It has been transferred into a language that nobody understands and is only known to Kim and a select few others. You will not be gaining access to it. Gone are their binary codes and is replaced with a new language implemented and can only be decoded by the trustee when gaining access to the banking system. Certain access will be granted over time to certain organisations that need to gain access, but that will be far more discretionary than has been previously. It will be very limited as who can access both sides, the back and front side of the banking system. Message to banks, central or otherwise. Rewriting and or adding new software to your system will not work anymore. It's not in your language base here on in. But you're free to go ahead and try to do it by all means, as we like to test our system and see who and what is still playing games. Rest assured, those who are will be noted and will also be discounted when requesting access in the future. Please take note of that. So to put it in simple terms, you mess about and cheat to try and book the system, and your access will be denied until you get on board with the new way. And rest assured, it may not be a quick approval system for those who are playing games, just to make that clear. Your current software will no longer work with the system. It's a brand new language that you will not be able to decode. Next item. Well, this is the last. You ready? President Donald Trump nominated today Acting Secretary of Defense Patrick Shanahan to formally take over the top spot at the Pentagon. Link that with previous intel, please. The President's spokeswoman said today Shanahan needs Senate confirmation for the post, which he will get, most recently held by James Mattis. Now, the reason for this appointment is Mr. Shanahan was appointed by Trump on the proviso he works directly with and for the Manor World Holding Trust. Mr. Shanahan contacted Kim directly and engaged her in a range of questions this week and asked for various proofs which Kim provided. And so now the Department of Defense are now on board with the trust and aware of who and what the Manor World Trust is and what we expect, and also how we do things in a fair and transparent manner. I'll repeat again, Mr. Shanahan, the new appointment to the top spot of the Pentagon, was appointed by Trump on the proviso he works directly with and or for the trust and Manor World Holding Trust. The issue at the top end of the deep states, etc., and the elites, the families, and the dragons, is the disbelief of how, firstly, a woman, a person without a penis, how can she know so much? Oops. And then acquire such perceived power and also knowledge. It rattles their manhood cages a bit at first. Then their disbelief of how Kim and a small assembled team can have wreaked so much havoc and changed so much with so little resources. It kind of boggles their mind a bit. One of the things that was said this week, it's not possible of what you have done. A complete group of unknowns booking the multi-trillion-dollar system and checks, and all power stored within. The answer back from Kim was, but we did. But fair play to them, those at the top of various organisations. They are now starting to see what Kim and we are all about and are taking the first steps to running with us, not against us. This goes to Kim and the team. Hi all, hero of the day, Kim and the team. Like I said, we are working in many fields. It's not just banking. You know, the trust will permeate through all levels of society, and it's important from our point of view that we protect that. That means changing certain policies that will be pushed through by the government, then so be it the IRS, or be it changing of the conditions of the Social Security Fund or the National Insurance in the EU. We will endeavour to have an impact on that, and we have. You know, it's up to largely other people to do their jobs. We can only do so much, and we've changed so much and given people a platform to operate from. You know, there's no need for all this nonsense. All the top generals and all top heads of agencies, they've all been lied to, they've all been made fools of, big time, more so than we have in some aspects. And you know, it takes time to get the message across that this is real, this is what we intend to do, we're going to make it fair, we're going to make it transparent, and we're going to share it. We're not going to collect for the few and leave a vast majority of the world population out. That's not the way forward. That is your old system that you've relied on and defended so heavily. It's failed. It's gone. It's done. And I can't say, and I won't say, when the funds will arrive. They arrive when they arrive. It may be next week. It may be 2 weeks. Is that right, Dave? It may be 2 years. Doesn't matter. Changes are being made, and progress is being made on a massive scale. And yes, a lot of it is internal, so to speak, and not external. But it also gives us an opportunity to build our own platform, which is what we're doing with this THI groups, and then operate in a better way. We must not replicate their old system of core pirate structure. Competitive nature, dog eat dog, will fail like they did. And so it's up to you all now to get yourselves ready, both in and of yourself, like the first song tonight. Save yourself first and then save the world. All of us have been overlaid with programming disease that we have to correct and go forward in a better way, a higher frequency way. I'm talking about higher frequencies. For those of you who noticed this week, a change in energies, it was because the source energy was ramped up a bit. So it's nice to observe what we know is taking place out on the pages and whatnot. But that's some of the things that happened this week. It's not the only thing. There's a lot of real heavy-ass interactions have been going on this week. That may be for a later show. But things on a massive scale, not only on a planetary scale, are changing by the second now. And it's important that you all learn to work and combine together in a tight unit. You are the way showers. You listeners to this show know far more than many other shows and what is really going on and what is important. You know, whether Trump slept with this slapper or that slapper, or his tax returns are legit or not, it's irrelevant. It's all distraction, you know, and we have to focus on fixing the plethora of problems on this planet, least of all the lack of 1.3 billion who have no electricity. You know, over 100 and odd years after electricity came out, and there's 1.3 billion who don't have any. You know, there's 60% of the planet who don't have access to 3 meals a day or clean water. Those people have to be looked after first, big time. Right, let's get into some op-ed pieces. And it's rather convenient that the first piece is some real reality, so to speak. We've all been duped by statistics which can be bent to fit, as we all know. But let's have a real look at the state of America and its job market and the real size of the labour force. Now, in April, it contracted by nearly 500,000 people, and it fell for the 4th straight month. Now, the last time the labour force fell 4 months in a row was during 2007 and 2009. And before that, one has to go back to 1950. As a result, the actual labour force participation rate slipped to 62.8%. And what was a 6-year high in January of 63.2%. That is 63 out of every 100 able-bodied Americans who are 16 or older either have a job or are seeking one. That means 37.2% of Americans able-bodied over 16 have no job. 37%. But it gets worse. So you've got nearly 4 out of every 10 Americans not in work. But the figures actually say 62.8% who have a job or who are seeking one, which means they haven't got one. That means the figure of those actually working is less than 6 out of 10. Now, the social impact of this is enormous, and this is why America lags so far behind in many aspects these days, and it's fallen rapidly. And why we need a solution quickly. There is a solution, as our listeners will know, provided other people do their jobs and not pander to private groups with no interest in any country, never mind America. And the Manor World Holding Trust can put everyone back to work in jobs they wish to do, not just they have to do to get by. Think about that for a minute. roughly 1 in 2 Americans able-bodied are not working. Add in the fact that many Americans are doing more than one job, and that figure could well dip below 1 in 2 Americans working. These are the real figures, not the fake figures put out by the government. They understand math as well as the top CEO of Wells Fargo, like zero. You know, half the populace not engaged, half not exercising their skill sets, leading many to a life of crime. The cost of that is astronomical. Never mind the pain created by stealing off people, or damaging people, or killing people because they have no job. We have to engage the children again, create apprenticeships in manufacturing skills, which has been decimated over the last 3 decades. Give people value again. That will lead to creating less sickness or mental health issues. Create training centres that are available to all. That's a key point, and often overlooked. As some of our children are then not being pushed down the narrowing corridor programme called military training, all designed to fill up their soldier programme. Have people noticed these military job training programmes all come to the fore when the country's job prospects diminish? Do you think that's a coincidence? No, it's not. It's a deliberate programme to make jobs and training scarce, then promote jobs and training in the military with an almost guaranteed position. And it's way past time Americans saw through that illusion and the programme, as that pattern is repeated often, that many should start at this point be seen right through it by now. So I'm hoping with the advancements we've made over the past week, which was stated in the Intel, is going to be the start of correcting this massive problem. And it is massive. 1 in 2 Americans not working. People complaining without thinking or doing due process came up today with regards to the proposed 23% spending tax. And I'm asking our listeners, it's something we need to observe in us all, of reacting to the headline and not future thinking of what are the pros and cons of this. We too often don't go deep enough and look at or into the process. And as an example of this is the Paris Climate Agreement. Yes, it says climate change, but in reality it's about stealing 2% GDP of every country each year. That's your example. The Patriot Act, it's about defending Americans. No, it was about taking away their freedoms. Think different and step away from the old programming, scratching the surface only with a premeditated headline will not lead to deeper understanding. So let's have some future thinking on this. Say it is a 23% spending tax. Have you considered or totaled up how much savings on having no income tax will you make? savings on the sales tax, because the spending tax will replace it. Savings on all the federal taxes that are on all types of insurance policies. Go and check them out. Fed tax this, Fed tax that. They will disappear. All the utility bills and the phones, landline or mobile, go and check out those federal taxes. Will all disappear. And add them all up and then balance against what you spend per month. Then you'll see the real difference. Now, the more you spend, the more you pay tax. And it applies to all. And currently those most hit with taxes are the working class, which is the real class of most people who consider themselves middle class. It's an illusion. And remember, the elites and the top level businesses pay absolutely jack. Now, they're the big spenders. They're going to have to pay, even if that rate is correct, 23%. Think about it. Next is a piece from Kevin Annett. That came out of Brussels and Vancouver. The new Hollywood. Vancouver, that is. Although Brussels is not particularly nice either. Full of pedos and child trafficking. The top leaders of the notorious child sacrificial cult known as the Ninth Circle will gather in Vancouver, Canada in mid-July and will conduct at least one black mass involving the ritual killing of children, according to confidential sources. Now, the Ninth Circle conclave will occur during and under the guise of the Anglican Church of Canada's 42nd General Synod, to be held between July the 10th and the 16th at the elite Sheraton Vancouver Wall Centre in downtown Vancouver. Now, at least 4 convicted felons associated with the Ninth Circle and crimes against humanity in Canada will be present at the synod, including the outgoing Anglican primate Fred Hiltz, Bishop Bob Bennett, Bishop Mark MacDonald, and the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby. Now, according to one source, this conclave is the first of its kind in recent years, involving cult leaders from Europe, Asia, and also North America. Unofficial observers from other criminally convicted churches, the Roman Catholic and United Church, will be present at the synod, including Ninth Circle members Archbishop Michael Miller, RCC, Gary Patterson, United Church moderator, and the same sources state that the Ninth Circle sacrificial ritual killing of at least 3 children will take place at midnight on July 16th, 2019, somewhere in the underground tunnel system linking the notorious Vancouver Club and the Anglican and Catholic Christ Church and the Holy Rosary Cathedrals. And people still give me flack about my stance on religion. Oh dear. In response, the global ITCCS network will be mobilising its forces and common law sheriffs to disrupt and stop these ritual killings and arrest those responsible, including by enforcing the standing arrest warrants against the aforementioned felons. The ITCCS and its Interpol associates have notified the Vancouver police of these facts and requested their assistance in making these arrests. In addition, a coalition known as the Friends and Relatives of the Disappeared, FRD, which commenced the first protests at the same Vancouver churches in 2005, to protest their genocide of Aboriginal children is reassembling to confront the killers at the July Synod. The FRD is working with local Aboriginal activists to stage a series of occupations, public protests and others direct actions at the Synod. We make an appeal to all of people of conscience to join these efforts and bring a stop to child trafficking, torture and killing by these criminal churches and the Ninth Circle. That was from Kevin Annett. A lot of society doesn't believe that this is possible, and I get that to a degree, but ignoring it makes us complicit at this time. You know, the sheer depth of the reports in mainstream media of high-level pedophilia and child trafficking should be enough, or should have been. And kudos to Kevin and his team and many others around the world. Some of them, we have an outside group that is connected in some way to the Trust, who are also taking on these pedophiles and child traffickers heavily. Kim referenced one group on the Zoom call on Saturday. This permeates through every single country, and these rituals are far more prevalent than people realise. Sacrificing to their fake gods who have never done any benefit to humanity, including those at the very pinnacle of the Roman Catholic Church known as the Vatican. If people really found out who they were worshipping as a god, there's going to be an awful lot of sick people. Over time, it will all come out. This next piece is going to go on Think Different. In fact, I think it already has. And it's for people to copy and paste and adjust it accordingly. It's just a guideline. For those who have been requested for vaccines. And it says as follows: as you have requested vaccines for our child or children, it is my duty as a parent to protect them in the event of vaccine or vaccines causing adverse reactions to our child or children. I am requesting you sign this indemnity form before you administer the vaccine as a protection for our child or children. In the event of our child or children becoming sick or other maladies following this vaccine, you, the administrator of this vaccine, are responsible for damages totaling, and I put $250 million. You can change it to $250 billion. Doesn't make any difference. Plus all the medical costs to correct it. Should you choose not to sign this indemnity, which in effect states you cannot guarantee the safety of our child or children, then it is my responsibility and right as a parent to refuse this vaccination. What you're then doing is you are taking personal responsibility for your child, not handing over to others who have no idea what they're giving your child or you. None. They don't know what's in that vaccine. The only people that know are the ones that filled them up. We have to stop trusting these people, and we have to start putting them on notice that the nurse who gives you, or the doctor that gives you that vaccination, has to be held personally responsible for it. Because if they can't guarantee your safety, Why should you trust them? Why should we? So at the bottom there would be name and position, and they would put that in capitals and then sign it. If that nurse or doctor refuses to sign it, then you have the right to say, I'm protecting my child, because you cannot guarantee the safety of my child. That will go on the Think Different website for people to download. Next item. As archaeological people find several discoveries in the Middle East exposing the myth of Israel, Jerusalem, and the peoples known as the Jews that have been used badly as pawns. This is one of the latest discoveries, an ancient tablet that was stated by the authorities to say on it, the House of David. But mysteriously, part of that tablet was damaged, covering the name. But upon a more detailed examination has found that it actually states the House of Balak. Oops. This is a common theme in that region. Everything to fit into a narrative. And archaeology in that region and in Egypt is currently beyond a joke. People are denied access. Theories put forward are denied. Grants are cut off to people and awarded to in-house groups, pun intended, that only relay their official narrative and his story, not ours. And anything that ties in to the Egyptians built the pyramids, and all the pharaohs were Egyptian, and all of Jerusalem and its surrounding areas fit into the Bible story as it has been relayed to us, except it's not. And as an example, let's look at, or rather not, I'd rather not look at him, because people with a more violent tendency than I would like to punch him in the face. Zahi Hawass. Let's look at his antics more closely. Mr. Hawass has been accused of dominating behaviour, forbidding archaeological people to announce their own findings, and courting the media for his own gain after they were denied access to archaeological sites because, according to Mr. Hawass, they were too amateurish. Really? Now, people wanted to do DNA sampling, but Mr. Hawass stated he is sceptical of the DNA testing of Egyptian mummies, and stated, from what I understand, it's not always accurate and cannot always be done with complete success when dealing with mummies. And until we know for sure that it's accurate, we will not use it in our research. Reality is, he's not sceptical at all. He is blocking an investigation to fit a created narrative of our history. Now, back in December of 2000, a joint team from Waseda University in Japan and Cairo's Ain Shams University tried to get permission for DNA testing of Egyptian mummies, but was denied by the Egyptian government. Now, Hawass stated at the time that DNA analysis was out of the question because it would not lead to anything. The two of them are in league, Hawass and the Egyptian government. Makes too much money, you see, in the tourist industry. But then in 2010, Mr. Hawass and his private team announced that they had analysed the mummies of Tutankhamun and 10 other mummies and said that the king could have died from malaria infection that followed a leg fracture. Oops. German researchers Christian Timmann and Christian Meyer have cast doubt on this theory, suggesting other possible alternatives for Tutankhamun's cause of death. Now, in 2012, a study signed by Hawass disclosed that Ramesses III had a haplogroup that is associated with the Bantu expansion and is the most dominant in the sub-Saharan Africa, E1b1a. I'll cover what the Bantu is shortly. So it's a case of you can only use DNA when it's conveniently controlled. Isn't that right, Mr. Hawass? So let's look at Bantu. Now, the Bantu expansion started on the west coast of Africa, not the east, the west, and spread out from there. And here is something to ponder on. What if that expansion was due to people arriving on boats from other regions? A bit like the Europeans arriving on the east coast of America and expanding out from there. And like some of the Europeans arriving in America, these Bantu groups eliminated the Pygmies and also the Khoisan populations. Now, Khoisan were the indigenous people of Africa. Oops. And this Bantu group appeared from nowhere on the west coast and suddenly spread out. It's a bit like what happened in America, really. Is it not? Now, the word Ubuntu comes from Bantu, which is Nguni Bantu, and the term means humanity. In a philosophical sense, it means the belief in a universal bond of sharing that connects all of humanity. But such a shame that such a good concept morphed into another money-making exercise by certain individuals in the alt media. But such is life these days. Now, the real reason Mr. Hawass and his band of grave robbers, which is essentially what they are, won't allow independent testing is many of those so-called pharaohs had red hair, and that is not native to that region. Oops. You see, it's all about money. Hi all, and welcome back. Where are we next? Let's put that in first. Talking about money, making a profit. This is something that will be useful for people going forward when it goes to the People's Club. If we're going to progress as a species and society, the idea of making a profit on the basic needs in life must end if we are to progress. Now, some will not like that idea, as they are immersed in the old harvesting system, and life's all about making extra pieces of paper. Newsflash, it's not. It's a program. Look at the boards of the top core pirate companies and the conglomerate companies. Many are known politicians for the start. Add in bloodline families, royals and other elite peoples, and you have a cartel. Now, politicians themselves are lobbyists for these private companies and focus more on that, which lines their pockets and gains them brownie points inside of their sick world, rather than focusing on doing things for and by the people, which is actually what they're paid to do. And they largely get away with that because we, the people, don't make them accountable enough. The piece last week where the Dems are pushing for a Green Deal, in which Pelosi and her husband stands to gain enormously. These people are not interested in all things green. Remember, these are the same people that are on the boards of oil, coal, nuclear companies, or worse, military contractors. What part of blitzing the planet with weapons constitutes going green? Now, they're also often a part of chemical companies. That includes a range of uses, including pharma. And again, those chemicals going into our water, is that going green? Food, energy, health industries, care centres, utilities and water distribution should not be for-profit organisations. Period. These, in case people have forgotten, they are what we all need to live or survive on. Why does it have to be profit-based? All of those organisations should be non-for-profit. There are essentials in life. You know, we pay an absolutely ridiculous amount just to live on this planet, where at one time essentially everything was free. It just required your life force energy, known as labour, to acquire what was needed. So the question is, if we are paying for everything, who is the landlord of the planet? Well, those in THI, OYM and Off-Planet Radio, we knew who he was and what they were. But that entity and group is now gone. And it's time we forge a new path based on the growth of humanity and all living things on this planet, not one based on how many pieces of paper you can collect, but how much effort has each put in to make this planet an abundant oasis for the essential things in life. That is the way forward. Ignoring the Manor World Holding Trust for a second, but here's an idea, because they came up again this week. And it's an idea that will shut up these fake humanitarians and families like the Rothschilds. Yes, you, David, you utter parasite. Jared Rand, Procter & Gamble, all talking humanitarian now and fake climate change. But where were they when their families and others looted everything on this planet, mainly with the support of the former trustee? Were they parroting humanitarian then? No. So if the planet is messed up because of your over-harvesting, be it in oil, fishing, tree cutting, weaponry, chemicals, war, etc., all these families have made their fortunes of raping and imports, destroying this planet. You lot created the damage, along with the church, the banks and the royals. How about you put all of your fortunes of ill-gotten gains together due to insider trading with the former trustee, and you fix the planet? There's a novel idea. Why is it they, like the Federal Reserve, just push it all onto the people? It's the same with the military and the veterans funds. The military created the damaged veteran. They should pay out of their own budget. not ask the people to fund it again. We never profited off oil, big pharma, military operations. You did. That makes you lot responsible, not we the people. And yet we the people funded your enterprises and then paid heavily for it at the production end. And you lot think we should pay for it all again? No. After you all ignored the devastation you were causing, all because the bottom line and pieces of paper were the God and the King. Now again, you created and profited, so you fix it. Let's see how many of you are humanitarian or climate interested then. I suspect none. Why? Because the lot of you are as fake as a glass eye is why. Talking about goons who make staggering profits, pay no taxes and then loot more money out of the system with these level of grants, all likely non-returnable. Let's highlight a few. Boeing, 774 million in free grants. Yeah, you heard that right. General Motors, 454 million. Lockheed Martin, 277 million. IBM, IB Marduk, or I was Marduk, bye, 268 million. Dow Chemicals, 267 million. Honeywell International, 205 million. Ford, 189 million. Archer Daniels Midland, 176 million. General Electric, 149 million. And the 3M Company, 114 million in grants. All of these companies have a net income of over $1 billion a year. And yet they're taking these freebies. I wonder what would happen if the People's Club asked for the same amount as Boeing are getting per year, of 774 million. I wonder what the answer would be. Because I guarantee that 774 million per year will be better spent, improve more lives and create more real jobs and make this country far more productive than these harvesting pirates have ever done. And these types of business enterprise has to be stopped. The same people are on multiple boards and are being paid by all of them. Also has to be stopped. Need not greed. You know, and then we have a story or a statement this week which doesn't help either. President Trump said the losses his business made in the 80s and 90s were for tax purposes. You know, in a tweet, in a reply to the New York Times article claiming that from 1985 through 1995 he made losses of over $1 billion. And the newspaper said that Trump's property empire from 1985 continued to lose money every year, totaling $1.17 billion in losses for the decade. And Mr. Trump tweeted, "You always wanted to show losses and often renegotiate with banks. It was a sport." And this is how they run businesses. But that sport, as Mr. Trump called it, funny enough, is not accessible to the average person on the street, Mr. Trump, who are having their homes taken off them. You ran up debts and still kept all your hotels and golf courses. And yet the average person on the street fails to make a few payments on the mortgage and loses their entire property. It's not a good image to set that, Mr. Trump. I'm sorry, it's just not. And these are some of the changes that are going to have to be made to make everything fair for everybody. Sri Lanka, mentioned earlier in the news. Oh my. Of course, all their people, just like the New Zealand people recently, are in a state of shock. And whilst all their people are in a state of shock, in came reason 2 for the bombings or killings. Not to remove bomb equipment from people or arresting terrorists. Oh no. Will remove the people's safety weapons to be able to defend themselves. How is that stopping terrorism? It's not. And it's all part of their game that is played out on the people several times in several countries. And the people of Sri Lanka have to think long and hard and ask, will the so-called terrorists hand in their weapons? Will they shite? So you handing in yours puts you in a vulnerable position where you are then relying on the state to protect you. Good luck with that. Bear in mind, your state neglected intelligence, as did New Zealand, I might add, in both countries for those recent incidents. And yet the bombing still took place and 260 plus people died due to their incompetence. You still want to rely on them to protect you? Keep hold of your weapons at all costs and ignore these goons running your country. As a side note, over 100 million, yes, you heard that correct, people died following the last 4 countries to hand over guns. Nothing to defend themselves from local and subsequently national criminals masquerading as the government, but ran by the global parasites. Yet again, that pattern repeats. Here's a fun piece before we go into another music break. Questions people don't ask. There's some humour in it. A lot of it is fairly serious stuff, or a lack of thinking on our part. Question 1. Mr. Politician, what are your policies? Question 2. If Russians had colluded, how is the CIA meddling in every other country's election different? 3. To the doctor, during your training, how much of it was spent learning cures? 4. Lawyer, do you understand common or natural law? 5. Lawyer again, why are you working for the Brits under the bar rules? 6. Teacher, do you realise we have all been taught crap for 4 generations? 7. Do people ask the church for proof of what they're saying? Think about that. Brokers, were you a second-hand car salesman before doing this job? banks and government, do you realise you both only have our money, not yours? Do people ask banks why their savings interest is 0.5 to 1% when they charge us 15 to 26% to loan our money, not theirs, back? If guns kill, who pulls the trigger? Bank and money lenders, can you explain the difference between discharging or paying off your debt? Blue pill or red pill? Does anybody ask why we have to take either? Charities. Where did all the money for Africa go? And why are millions still starving there? People in the military. Is it acceptable to kill someone because someone else asked you to? To the IRS. Why are you forcing me under duress to pay for something that is voluntary? To humanity in general. Is it acceptable to hate people from another country if you've never met them? If Jesus returns, will he not be classed as a zombie? How do we know that the people who wrote the Bible or the Talmud or other scriptures were not fake news? Doctor, do you know what is in this vaccine? Can you verify it? Can you swear on your life it is safe to use? Will you sign a $1 billion indemnity should he or she answer yes to all? If inflation is a secret tax and we pay more, when do we get a refund for deflation? Do people ask why in a general election do only two parties get recognised? What would happen today if you told a police officer or a doctor you saw a bush go on fire by itself and then whilst it was on fire it spoke to you? Who told us we had to pay to live on our own planet? Has anybody asked, how can you be an immigrant on your own planet? (24) Do TSA workers at the airport go through the same checks as we do before starting work? If not, why? If your country is democratic and you have royals, who voted for them? If oil is fossil fuel, why are they drilling below the fossil levels? If nuclear power only started in the last century, why is there a layer of fallout across the Middle East and Southeast Asia buried beneath the soil? If Adam and Eve are the first two on this planet, does it not mean all of humanity is born out of incest? If vegetarians are about saving animals, why are they eating all their food? If elections are fair, why haven't we had a person interested in humanity? If GMO is good for us, why does it have no vitamins or nutrients in it? If fluoride is good for our teeth, why does it require a hazmat unit to clean it up? If all trails from planes are contrails, who developed the planes that don't leave contrails and why? If a woman is a second-class citizen, why is she responsible for bringing up children? Why can't a large number of current American teachers not answer all the questions from a 13-year-old was tasked to answer back in the 1880s? Has hip-hop ever done a song that doesn't include the lyrics shooting cops, bitch, mofugger, n-word, f-word or ho? 37. Why is everyone sick or dying, including the dog, in country and western music? If black is deemed dark, why is the White House called white? If Columbus founded America, does that mean no one was here before? Did Columbus bring millions of Native Americans ashore with him? If America gained independence from Britain on July the 4th, why did Britain send America its new higher tax tariff 2 weeks later? Why did all domesticated cats only originate in Egypt? If air travel is safe, why did they call their building terminal? If Israel and Jerusalem is so important, then why do most Jews not live there? On a search for pictures of Hillary Clinton, why is there different shapes and sizes of Hillary? If Mr. Mnuchin is the chosen one, why isn't he the president? If every country is in debt, who is the money owed to? If the originals were called the Founding Fathers, who founded them? If ETs had been in orbit around this planet since alt media started, why haven't they landed or helped? How can a country with a GDP of 18 billion, 9 zeros, sustain a global currency reset of 7 quadrillion, 15 zeros or more? If the Earth is wobbling, how can the eclipses be consistent? If the Earth is flat, why hasn't anybody fell off yet? And the final question people don't ask: which executive order, statute, rule or regulation created by our incorporated companies acting as our government stated people shouldn't care for each other? Hi all, and welcome back to the last 3 or 4 pieces I've got to cover before we wrap up this show. Seems we've covered a lot already, and there's more to come. Let's go into the National Security Act of 1947, because it impacts what is going on now, and will be looked at into restructuring it back, a bit like the IRS and the tax revenue people. So it was a major restructuring. Restructuring is a bit of a misnomer of the United States government's military and intelligence agencies following World War II, except it was already in planning during and before. Now, the majority of the provisions of the Act took effect on September the 18th, 1947, the day after the Senate confirmed James Forrestal as the first Secretary of Defense. More about him later. Now, the Act merged the Department of War and renamed as the Department of the Army and the Department of the Navy into the National Military Establishment. Remember, the Navy is connected to SSP. They run it, which was then headed by the Secretary of Defense. It also created the Department of the Air Force and the United States Air Force, which separated the Army Air Forces into its own service. And it also protected the Marine Corps as an independent service under the Department of the Navy. Now, aside from military reorganization, the Act established the National Security Council. National Security. And also, go figure, the Central Intelligence Agency. Clowns in America. Now, the US's first peacetime non-military intelligence agency was the CIA. First peacetime. But of course, our members know there was the OSS, SS being the most prominent letters, before the CIA. Now, the Act and its changes, along with the Truman Doctrine and the Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan is Marduk's control system, by the way, were major components of the Truman's administration Cold War strategy. Or so we are told. And yet the Cold War, this is 1947, the Cold War didn't start until 1950. Oops. When the US got involved in a war between North and South Korea. Funny how history throws up these strange anomalies in the timeline, a bit like the archaeological thing in Egypt and Jerusalem. Now, the signing for this bill took place aboard Truman's VC-54C presidential aircraft called Sacred Cow, which is the original Air Force One. So what is the terminology of Sacred Cow? It's kind of fitting. A person or thing immune to criticism or questioning. Right in your face. As in, the rules governing the press conference have become a sacred cow in this administration. Yes, that clearly fits the bill within politics. The first Air Force One was named after a person or thing immune to criticism or questioning, which is exactly why all this national security was set up. No oversight, you see. Now, the day after the Senate confirmed James Forrestal as the first Secretary of Defence, and his power was initially limited, and it was difficult for him to exercise the authority to make the office effective. Why? Because people were interfering in the background. And this was later changed in an amendment to the Act in 1949, creating what was to become the Department of Defence, the DoD. Now, Forrestal only lasted 1 year after being critical of Israel and in favour of Arabs and Palestinians. Forrestal clashed with journalists and politicians alike during this time, and then he suddenly developed a non-defined illness described as going in a daze and was whisked from DC to Florida. Then on to Bethesda, if I said that right, or Bethesda, Maryland Hospital, who then declared him mentally unstable, whereby they then placed him in a room on the 16th floor of a building where he subsequently fell out of the window and died. Oops. As a quirk of fate, it may seem, or a conspiracy, it was stated that President Roosevelt was also under stress like Forrestal, and was announced that he was under stress and suffering mental disposition. Roosevelt attended the same Bethesda Hospital, I know one of those pronunciations is right, in Maryland for testing. Not long after that, he developed a headache, slumped in his chair, and died aged just 63. Make of that what you will. Now, the American myth of you can't serve more than 2 terms goes out of the window with Roosevelt. He was on his 4th term as president when he died. All in all, he was president for just over 12 years. But this act set up the base for the modern US military and agencies being outside of the control of the government or the Congress. Presented as being standardised and slimming down, but what it really meant was it was fattening it up and having zero oversight to then launch death and destructions against various countries that never attacked America once, and became the focal point of the military might, not of America, but of the control system. Next piece, a lesson in old ways, or how old ways have failed us and how not to operate going forward. Kind of sad really, this, but it's all too common. Just how far can you get in the New York City socialite scene without a real fortune of your own, is the question. Well, incredibly far in the case of a woman by the name of Anna Delvey, real name Anna Sorokin. Now these people change their names. Who tricked the city's elite into thinking she was a billionaire heiress. She hired a private jet, went to all the best parties and threw cash at everyone she saw, including a $100 tip if you carried their bag or you were her Uber driver. And yet ultimately her time at the top was short-lived, and it kind of unravelled spectacularly. Now in real life, Ms. Sorokin had no multi-million-dollar trust fund, Her father was a former truck driver who now runs a heating and cooling business, and after her credit cards began to fail repeatedly, she was kicked out of the luxury hotels she was living in, leaving other people were left to pick up the bills. Now, following a month-long trial, Sorokin has now been found guilty of multiple offences, including stealing more than $200,000. And as proven at the trial, Ms. Sorokin committed real white-collar felonies over the course of her lengthy masquerade, according to the District Attorney Cyrus Vance in a statement announcing the conviction. Now, Sorokin, who chose not to testify and pled not guilty, now faces up to 15 years in prison and will be sentenced on May the 9th. So how did this woman in her mid-20s cause financial chaos across the city, leaving people to pick up her tabs in the US and also beyond? Well, she came to New York on a mission. At least that's what she told people. She wanted to start an art centre with a chic Soho house ethos, and she was considering calling it the Anna Delvey Foundation, according to the New York Magazine, and she claimed to have lined up a renowned artist, Christo, for the inauguration. Now, for the venue, she had her eye on a 6-floor space, 45,000 square foot, in Church Missions House, which is a prestigious late 19th century building on the corner of Park Avenue. Quite ambitious, that. But sadly, it also sounds eerily reminiscent of a recent proposal sent into the People's Club. Essentially, I want a mini empire. That's not the way forward for we the people. The empire is the People's Club for us all going forward, where everyone gets a share and say, not creating status or millionaires, when many people globally don't even have the 5 basic essentials in life. Think different, please. But it's an all too familiar theme of people trying to be something they're not, refusing to accept no matter what job or lifestyle they do or have is more than enough in society. It's an all too common story of a person basically who didn't love themselves enough and so wanted to create an illusion world that she perceives as being important, except it's not. A socialite is often a parasitic existence to begin with, filled with people being fake, competing over materialistic, shallow wealth trappings, when in reality many are fueled into debt cycles they can't keep up with. Because heaven forbid these people lose their falsely perceived status, all acting like mini royalty or global superstar, who most don't realise are fake also. It's a cycle that we at THI, OYM and Off Planet Radio are trying to break, away from the vacuous, unrealistic, materialistic, debt-based lifestyles, where it's about living in abundance of the basics in life, not a harvesting lifestyle that renders many one paycheck away from disaster. Why do it? Now, there are some people who live in homes 3,000 to 5,000 square foot, which may have been fine with loads of children around, but are they happy there, particularly if they've got a large mortgage? And then there are people who live in 200 to 300 square foot homes, tiny homes, and are as happy as anything. Why? Lower costs, less debt, and free to live. Once you walk away from the program of status within your circle, and I want people to remember that statement, the program of status within your circle, You are freeing yourself away from the inevitable debt cycle, or an expenditure list that, no matter how much you buy, will never bring or guarantee peace or happiness. Now, all of us, in some way, over the last 40 years, have lost our way of buying to keep up with the Joneses, drafting the illusion of middle class like that is the be-all and end-all. But for the vast majority of it, it's all based on loans and credit card debt. That's not middle class. That is a debt-based cycle you will struggle to get off. Forgetting the fact that class in and of itself is also a divide and conquer program. It just hasn't served us well, and we've forgot how to live and enjoy life and take part in all its wondrous beauty. That is all still there to see once we open our eyes and see life in a proper way. Next piece. One of the members posted something this week which highlights my mistrust of medical diagnostic peoples, in particular psychiatrists. Psychology is not learned from a book, despite what the system tells you, but visual observations of people and correlating it with wisdom. And these people make stuff up as they go along. And here's a prime example. Drapetomania. D-R-A-P-E-T-O-M-A-N-I. Drapetomania. A condition of mental illness for black people or slaves who exhibit an irrational desire for freedom and a tendency to try to escape. Oh, dear me. A mental illness for an irrational desire for freedom and wanting to escape slavery. It's beyond comprehension, that type of thinking, and indicative that profession in and of itself is not ran or operated based on mental illness or medical assessment, but on political programming rhetoric, where they can just declare anyone as being nutty. Hello, the Baker Act. And I'll state again, most mental patients, as they're called, are, in my opinion, suffering from a form of possession by non-form entities from the spirit world. A majority of that spirit world is infected or taken over by the dark forces. Now, to understand anything to do with the body of another person requires empaths. You don't get that from a book or passing their incompetence level tests. So, seeing as they like to create new words, here's a new word for the cabal, deep states, or rich elites. Half-wittedry, an irrational condition of delusion and deep desire to hold on to power and control for a system that no longer exists. Half-wittedry. That's my personal assessment. Something came up in final piece in a Zoom call at the weekend, which Kim attended, much to the surprise and glee to the listeners who tuned in, and was in regards to chambers or business organisations' involvement. Now, I think some are under the misconception that we have to sell the funds and Manor World Holding Trust to people. We don't. We have nothing to sell, only to teach them a different way. Now, initially, we need to focus on what the members in THI need and want to do. Set themselves up in positions they want to do for work purposes before we engage the outside circle. We don't need chambers or business organisations. Those are old systems and have failed us. Once everything is set up and THI members are sorted, then we engage the outside circle on how they can change their way of operating, and that should be the path to follow. Now, some will ask, why set up THI first? Because our members have been taught to operate and think in a better way, is why. Taught money is not the be-all and end-all. Now, to the outside circle, apart from Randy and Alan's groups, it's a case of, free money, give it to me. That's greed, not need. Plus the fact, only our group, with Randy and Alan, have done anything to not only promote it, but they investigated it as well, to then garner a deeper understanding. The rest basically ignored us or told us to go and F ourselves. So why not support the people who gave their time and engaged the Manor World Holding Trust? And the main aspect of it all, though, is to teach a new and better way. And as only those three groups have participated in that, and we welcome all others who think in the same way, they are the ones, I feel, to take this forward, to be the change. Our members, I want to go out and teach the rest of society better ways, better thinking, need not greed, away from the materialistic, competitive world, and show a path to a new way where all of us can thrive, not just survive from day to day or week to week, thrive. Helping each other changes your frequency. Too many in society have low vibrational frequency and thinking, and we can all play a role in changing that. Don't wait for the change, be the change. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity show. My name's Thomas Williams. I hope you've all enjoyed the show, including the intel. Bye for now.